Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Today, we're going to start with, as you know, the Edmund Pettus Bridge. There was Bloody Sunday 50 years ago, I think Saturday. Okay. And there was a celebration. So I have the daughter of Hosea Williams, Reverend Hosea Williams, who was Martin Luther King's right-hand man. I have his daughter for an interview. It's half the show today, so I'm going to get started with that. But before I get started, I want to say welcome aboard, AVQ. Welcome aboard from Brooklyn, New York. Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. We have Bridge MCP from Binghamton, New York. Patrick Magner from Houston. We also have Lee Grant from Montgomery County. Eric Hayes from Atascocita, Kingwood. Lee Bierkat from Austin. And Joe from Los Angeles, California. I tell you what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to start the video. And I know today, more than likely, we have Patrick that wants to call in and give us some information about Medicaid and how it's going to affect people. And I'll put that video on the screen from Bridge as we come back for the screen. I promise with this interview, I want to get it out, and then we'll get back to business. Here we go. Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. My name is Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being with us. Today, Dr. Barbara Williams Emerson is a lifelong champion for social justice and human rights. One cannot discount her pedigree, as she is the daughter of one of America's greatest civil rights leaders, Hosea Williams. Dr. Williams is with us to discuss the state of civil rights in America and the 60th anniversary of the Scope Project at the Selma March in Selma, Alabama. Good afternoon, and thank you so kindly for being with us, Dr. Williams Emerson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Well, look, first of all, it's an honor to have you on our program, and thank you for all the work that you have been doing over the years. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Well, I am as I was just saying before we started. March 4th is the day that gives the command that has followed me all of my life. Was my 77th birthday. So I'm celebrating the birthday this week. And I am in Selma and Montgomery. I'm in Montgomery right now for the celebrations, the reunion of the Scope Project. Scope is the Summer Community Organization and Political Education Project, which Martin Luther King established and gave my father the job of directing in the summer of 1965. And we are here it's the 60th anniversary of the participants in that project. And we will also be going for Thursday and Friday. And then on tomorrow, Saturday, we'll be going over to Selma, Alabama for the 60th commemoration of the Bloody Sunday March, which my father led across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which was the impetus for the Selma to Montgomery March, which pushed the passage of the voting rights bill. So that was my 17th March of just right after my 17th birthday.
That is amazing that you actually witness history. And for those of us who are living through what we're living through now, it seems like a history that we first of all need to remember how people fought for it then. We talk about Bloody Sunday. We talk about the bridge. It is amazing what I've gone through. And when we look at where we are today, Dr. William Emerson, we don't see that fight that your dad and yourself, because you were 17 during that time, you actually lived through that. Where do you think we are in this civil rights movement?
Well, as they say, history repeats itself. I see it as in terms of what we're now calling diversity, DEI, diverse. Yes. I have a theory which I call awareness, appreciation, and alignment of these initiatives. And right now it's called DEI. Before it was called at another point affirmative action or multiculturalism, civil rights. It's been called a number of things. And the process goes something like this, whether it's in a government, whether it's in a hospital, whether it's in a school, whatever the institution is. There are critical incidents that spark the awareness of the group that we need to do something about the situation, the underlying situation. And that could be a critical incident like the beating of Hosea Williams, who led the Bloody Sunday March along with John Lewis. Or it could be a critical incident like the murder of George Floyd. And from that critical incident, there are acts of appreciation of the fact that we need to do something. So in the case of Bloody Sunday, there was a Voting Rights Act because the march was to protest the lack of participation of Blacks in the voting system, and was, in the case of George Floyd, it became the lack of participation of people in the equity of many things. And so we got Black Lives and the Black Lives Matters movement. And we bring about many acts of appreciation that we need to do something about this. What does not happen is there's not an alignment of the institutional goals and objectives of these institutions to make those goals work within the institution. So we keep repeating history. We keep repeating the same kinds of awareness and appreciation, but we don't actually align the institutions to make the diversity, the affirmative action, the civil rights a part of the fabric of the institution. So we have to keep repeating this. So once again, we are repeating this process. Now, DEI has been cut. So we'll do this again until there'll be another critical incident. And we are being pushed to the extreme by the actions of from the top. So there will be, in my opinion, there will be a critical incident to come sooner than later. I don't know what it will be, but there will be some critical incident that will spark a reaction. It's inevitable.
That will spark the necessary atonement.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Let's see. Is it me?
Yeah, I think it's you because I am transmitting. Okay, can you hear me? Maybe it's going to your Bluetooth. Yeah, maybe it's going to your Bluetooth.
Okay, yes, I have. It's back. I'm good.
Right. Okay, we're back. You know what I was saying, Dr. Williams Emerson, is that it's an atonement. It seems like it's an atonement that has never been fulfilled, and if that atonement isn't fulfilled, it seems like that repetition that you talked about is there. I'm glad that you spoke about some incident having to happen. Your dad, Reverend Hosea Williams, as well as John Lewis, the Honorable Representative John Lewis, were instrumental in having one of those incidents occurred. What I fear too often, and you tell me how do we mitigate this? What I fear too often is, given that is so far removed, we talk about it being 60th anniversary now of that particular critical event, and that was much more involves so many more people than, let's say, the incident in where was it, in Wisconsin, I believe. Given the far removal of this incident, how do we get people into that mode of action again? It just seems like that type of action led by your dad and others and yourself, because you were a part of this movement as well. You continued that movement after the passing of your dad. What do you think is going to be necessary to create that catalyst?
Well, I think when it happens when it happens in the most intense sense. It happens when it touches people personally. When it becomes a matter of the cost and the benefit, when the cost touches people's lives individually, and it makes it relevant to their individual lives. And I think that the way that so many elements are being jeopardized by the various systems that are being touched by the changes in the government allocations that are currently happening, that it won't be just diversity or affirmative action or DEI characteristics. I think it's going to be even greater.
You know, unfortunately, I think you're right, because when you mentioned earlier that until this affects people personally, which tells us that maybe here in America, we still have a certain lacking of empathy, where we don't feel, where we have not taught ourselves to feel each other's pain. And because of that, when you mention having others having to feel the pain before anything concrete is done, I find that sad, but I don't know any other way around it.
I believe it's because in America we have so much that our feelings are insulated by all of the materials that we have around us. Our hearts are insulated by the materialism that we have. So it takes longer and more to touch the hearts of an American.
Well, I tell you what, you're
because they're insulated. Because our hearts are insulated by our materialism, because of the culture that we live in that promotes materialism as being more important than compassion. So we are an individualistic society where we value individualism and our own feelings and our own concerns more than we do the community. So we are protective of our own needs and concerns first. So we're not moved to be compassionate. We are moved to be protective. So we don't see the need to act or to resist until it comes, as they say, until they come for you. Yeah. That's when you're moved to action, because you are normally only concerned for yourself because of the individualism that is a value in this society.
Right. Now, will you be using that, the 60th anniversary and all the festivities that'll be happening to try to recenter the movement, if you will, remind people of how we actually got on the path to a better America and how easy it is to slide back if we don't keep the movement active?
Well, what I try to do is the artifacts and the materials that you see behind me here are part of an exhibition a traveling exhibition that I have on the life. I call it, the title is Unbought and Unbossed, the life of Hosea Williams. And I try to use it as an example of how one person's life can make a difference in the greater scheme of things, because it traces from a person who was the child of two blind people, who was literally conceived in a place called the Macon School for the Colored Blind in 1926. So he was born at the beginning of the real Depression, to a blind, Black, single female, and who was obviously a single mother. And he was able, through grit and hard work, to become a person who was at the ground zero in the resistance, the nonviolent direct action that was responsible for the two bills that came out of the modern civil rights movement. He was at St. Augustine on the ground as an organizer for the work that is credited for the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and he was on the ground and led the Bloody Sunday March, and was also the director of the Selma to Montgomery March, which is credited as the movement that was the catalyst for the passage of the Voting Rights Act. So that's an example how one person can have an effect on change. And I think that is going back to what we were saying, that is how we must think and move, that we must be willing to participate in the process for change, for there to be change. So that is what I try to use this as an example of. The coming together for the reunion of Scope 60, I think, is an example of how young people, I was 17, the oldest in our group was probably 21, how youth, a lot of these young people were not able to register to vote, yet they use their energy and their intelligence to work to bring people to the understanding that you can now register to vote, even though it has been an unwarranted process of keeping you from registering to vote. You can now do that. So it's always a matter of resistance to oppression and taking action to overcome. So I think this is the teaching moment that those of us who have been involved in these activities can pass on. But it is not our job at this point to bring about this change. It is the job of the current generation, because these sweeping changes that are being brought about are not going to affect us. It is going to affect the younger generation for a lifetime. So it is their responsibility to wake up, put the phone down, put the video games down, and use that energy and that intelligence to resist what is going on, so that you are not in a position that when you do wake up and see what is going on, your freedoms, your liberties, and your resources have not been taken away from you. So I think that's what we can do with this kind of work.
There are two major things that you said there that I think is very important for the young people to talk about. This exhibit, first of all, showing that what you actually had to go through to get these liberties that many still have. And two, that one person can make a difference. A lot of times people sit down and say, what can I do? And you just said it. The Reverend Hosea Williams didn't say I can't do anything. He went out there and did it, and many people paid the price for it. So first of all, I want to thank you for what you do in putting that out to ensure that our youth get the message. Tell us a little bit about You Came Here to Die, Didn't You?
That is a book that's written by one of the Scope volunteers, and she's over in there having breakout sessions now. That's not something that I did.
Okay,
but it's one of the volunteers, and that was her book, and that statement was made to her, one of the white volunteers, and that statement was made to her by a white person, actually a Black person in the community that she was assigned to as a volunteer, because they thought that this was entirely ridiculous, that these young white people should be coming into the South, into Black communities to do volunteer work.
They were shocked. Yeah.
They were shocked.
They were shocked. Yeah.
They were that they were giving them a fast reality check. You came here to die, didn't you? Because it was more dangerous, this person felt, for these young white people to come into the Deep South, into Black neighborhoods, to do this voter registration and to talk about voting for Black people than it was for those of them who lived there, because the whites in the community were going to take it out on them.
And it's amazing that, in fact, it did come to pass for a few of the students that did come from up north when they were found in the dam at the river. So go ahead.
Yes, that was actually the summer before, the summer of '65, and that was the Mississippi Freedom Summer Project. Right. Now, my experience with that project was that I was a dean at Queens College, and Queens College, the relationship to those students was that Andrew Goodman was one of those students who was killed, and he was a student at Queens College. Mm-hmm. And Mickey Schwerner, his brother, was a counselor at Queens College. And so my first reunion I organized the 25th reunion of that group of volunteers at Queens College. And I had excellent turnout, and Rosa Parks was our guest speaker. And when I sent out, I happened to be in Atlanta, and I said to someone who worked at the King Center that I was going to try to organize a reunion of those volunteers. And they said, "Oh, we just got a box of and found in a garage in Mississippi, a box of papers that look like that they were the original applications for that project." And she said, "Do you want them?" And I said, "No, you keep them at the King Center, but could you give me the names?" She says, "You want the names and addresses?" I said, "No, they're not likely to be where they were living 25 years ago." I said, "I work at a college, so I know what I need is give me the names and the colleges that they were at, because I know their alumni associations kept up with them." So I wrote letters to the alumni associations and told them that I was trying to find these people because they had been a part of this project, and I had got lots of responses when I did get the addresses, and my secretary had typed the information at the top of the page. And when she gave it to me, I said, "Oh, everything is at the top." She says, "Well, you want me to retype it?" I said, "No, just say 25 years later, I want people to know," and then just put lines. Well, when we got the forms back, people had written on the lines, they'd written in the margins, they'd written on the back. So I took those comments of what they wanted people to know 25 years later and compiled them into a book of the Mississippi Freedom Summer Project. And as I said, that was the precursor to the SCOPE project. And that was sponsored by SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Committee.
Right.
And so Andrew Goodman's mother came, and we actually named the bell tower at Queens College for them, and Queens. So the highest point in New York City is named for the volunteers who were killed in Mississippi.
Wow.
And we had the 25th reunion, and that's how I then moved forward and did the 40th reunion of this group and the 50th and now the 60th.
Well, look, I mean, this is you don't know the amazement that I have in listening to these stories, given the history. So I want to thank you for that. And I always end these discussions by asking, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
What should you have asked me that you didn't? What kept me going?
What has kept you going, my dear?
What has kept me going is the love of working with young people. As you said, I have worked in higher education for all of these years, and that is the love, that is what has kept me going, is every year meeting new, young, vibrant, intelligent young people. Just before I came on here, I was with a young man, Dr. Rolandus Rice, who is 43 years old, and it just amazes me that you can have someone like this. He's a prime example. I loved working in higher education because I got to be around people like this. Dr. Rolandus Rice is at 43 years old, is the vice president of Tuskegee University. He is also the biographer of Hosea Williams.
Wow.
So he has written a book, an excellent book, the title is Hosea Williams, A Lifetime of Protest and Defiance. And it was his dissertation for his doctorate at Auburn University. And he is the only second African American to get a doctorate in history at Auburn University, and he was a high school dropout.
Wow.
And he said when he was young, he used to drive by our house in Atlanta, and his mother would say, and many people would say that's that Jose Williams. He's crazy. Jose Williams is crazy. And he wondered why Jose Williams was crazy. And I always say he's crazy like a fox, but not a lot of people. Some people didn't understand his crazy. And so he said, as he was growing up, so when he had the opportunity to pick a dissertation topic, he was going to do his research to find out why. So as the executor to the Hosea Williams estate, I placed his papers, which turned out to be 120 linear feet of material, at the Auburn Avenue Research Library for African American History and Culture. And in it was an unpublished autobiography. So I was able to give Rolandus access to that. And so he wrote the biography using the autobiography as a primary source. So it is very interestingly written because the subject speaks for himself. And Rolandus has written it almost like a detective novel. And he has used an individual African-American person to tell the history, because my father was born in 1926 and died in 2000, to tell the history of African Americans during most of that century. And then he has placed the history of African American people in the history of U.S., in the context of U.S. history during that period. So it's like a circle that broadens, a historical circle that broadens out and showing the relationship between those parts. So working with someone with that kind of brilliance, you know, that saying that I am my ancestors' greatest dream. So working with young people and seeing their brilliance is what has kept me going.
Dr. Barbara Williams Emerson, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right. And thank you for all the work that you do. And I hope those festivities celebrating Bloody Sunday, celebrating the march, etc., is as effective as it was 60 years ago.
My pleasure.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. But let me just say, I enjoyed speaking to her, like both off camera, off the part that's out, plus otherwise, because what you are listening to there is history. That is a woman who, with her dad, who walked right next to Martin Luther King on the Edmund Pettus Bridge as those evil cops were beating the crap out of John Lewis, the famous civil rights leader that recently died, as well as her dad, Hosea Williams, another right-hand man to Martin Luther King, as they were beaten, bloodied up on that bridge. And that's why we have the Civil Rights Bill. And that's why we have the Voting Rights Bill. That is a direct lineage to the freedom of many, the fight against Jim Crow, the fight against not being able to vote, the fight for equality that continues today. And like she mentioned, I think what is so important about having her talk, I think what is so important about having her talk is how we have receded with having a Donald Trump appease his most racist base to talk about DEI, something that really, it's amazing how these guys project. DEI is exactly the opposite of what they purport it to be. Whereas there has always been, for specifically white men, they have always been privileges to give them access that no one else has. And diversity, equity, and inclusion came about to ensure that women, people of color, natives had equal access to success. Not to be with a job that they weren't qualified for, but to ensure that all qualified people had access to the job. And as as Miss Williams is saying, this battle has to be fought over and over again, because what has been done with DEI was, again, allow mediocrity to beat out the most effective. Under Donald Trump, our Secretary of Defense, compared to the previous Secretary of Defense, it is a clear, Donald Trump shows the clear picture of why DEI is important. Because look at who we have replaced Secretary of Defense Austin with, an incompetent drunk. Look at who we have replaced the Joint Chief of Staffs with, from a 4-star general to an incompetent 3-star general. So Donald Trump proves the necessity of needing DEI, because without DEI, the Donald Trumps of the world continue to make mediocrity and failure reign. Just like Donald Trump has failed his way upward, just like the defense secretary has failed himself upward, many of us are never afforded the opportunity to success our way upward based on our competence. Bridge MCP says white are freaking out. They won't have their privilege anymore. Privilege they don't even know they have. What is so funny about it is lack of DEI. The privilege has made people weaker. It has actually, it is like if you don't use something, you lose it, that kind of thing. There's a TikTok that I was looking at today that I wanted to play it, but this guy who did it, you know what? I think I'm going to, after I put Bridges' thing on the screen, I think I'm going to defer what I did for the Latino FAFO. I think I'm going to play that because I think it's essential in this point. But let's put Bridges' thing on the screen. On the bright side, the SpaceX guy has been put in charge of rush delivering the newly updated Air Force One. I don't know if that should make Donald Trump happy. After all of his rockets have been blown up, Musk rockets. But you know what I want to do, guys? And to my white brothers here, this is a guy on TikTok I want you to listen to. It's a white guy who's saying all these things. But I took exceptions to a couple of things that he said. But I want you to listen to it. And let me see if I can find it. I wasn't going to play it because I wanted to make sure I was going to cut it up and play it. But I think I'm going to play it, I'm going to go ahead and play his TikTok because for a lot of our racists in this group, for a lot of the racists that we have in our chat, right? They don't quite understand sometimes unless it is graphically told to them. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to play it today, and then you guys tell me what you think about it. And then we'll talk to the other folks. Let me see how long it is. I don't think it's too bad. All right, let's go ahead and play it. Let's play it.
Elon Musk is the apex white predator. He is not a genius, not a visionary, and not self-made. He is the ultimate white mediocrity, worshipped by white men who need a messiah to convince themselves that white male dominance is not crumbling. Newsflash. It is. In reality, Musk is a government-funded welfare queen, a serial scam artist, and an overhyped, incompetent tech bro who continues to fail upwards because white billionaires, investors, and media refuse to let him die. If Musk were any other race, he would have been laughed out of Silicon Valley years ago. Instead, he's held up as the greatest mind of our time. Not because anything he's actually achieved, but because white people are desperate to believe the future still belongs to them. Musk did not create Tesla. Tesla was founded in 2003 by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning. Musk swooped in with the money, forced himself into leadership, and then erased the real founders from history. Tesla's actual engineers create its technology. Musk just takes credit for it. Musk did not create SpaceX's rocket tech. Everything SpaceX does is built on decades-old NASA and Soviet research. The actual SpaceX engineers do all of the work. Musk just plays visionary for the cameras. SpaceX survives off billions in US government contracts. Musk isn't a self-made space pioneer. He's a government-subsidized middleman. Musk's only real invention? Hype and bullshit. Every single idea he pushes is either a recycled, stolen idea from someone else, a fake, unworkable scam designed to hype up stock prices, or a half-finished, legally questionable death trap that never actually works. Hyperloop? A nonsense distraction meant to kill high-speed rail. Neuralink? A dystopian tech bro fantasy that killed monkeys in horrifying ways. Tesla Autopilot? A glitchy, deadly mess that's already killed people. Musk's entire reputation is built on one thing: white people's belief that a white, rich man must be a genius. Musk loves to scream about socialism and big government, but the truth is, he would be nothing without government funding. Tesla only survived because the government gave it a $465 million loan. SpaceX exists because of billions in Pentagon and NASA contracts. Musk's businesses get massive tax breaks, subsidies, and grants, meaning the government funds his so-called success. Musk hates government help, unless it's going directly into his pocket. He whines about welfare, but sucks up taxpayer dollars like a vampire. He attacks union workers while using government funding to avoid paying fair wages. He pretends to be an independent thinker, but relies entirely on state contracts to stay relevant. This is white capitalist hypocrisy at its peak. Steal everything from the public and then pretend like you built it yourself. Tesla is a mess. Cars catch fire, doors break off, software malfunctions constantly. Tesla is years behind on production targets, but Elon keeps lying about new breakthroughs. Autopilot crashes keep killing people, but Musk still sells it as nearly perfect. Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Are you kidding me? Musk paid $44 billion for a company worth half that. He fired the best engineers and replaced them with his yes men. He destroyed ad revenue, brought back Nazis, and turned Twitter into an unusable hellscape. The Boring Company? A total joke. His tunnel revolution is literally just a smaller tunnel with traffic jams. The Las Vegas tunnel is slower than walking. Every city that bought into his scam has nothing to show for it. SpaceX, running on fraud. Most of its innovations are just flashy PR stunts. Delayed projects, failed test launches, and government money keeping it alive. Musk promises Mars colonization, but can't even land a contract to send people to the moon. If Musk were anyone else, he would be considered a disaster CEO whose companies are collapsing under his stupidity. But because he's a rich white man with a god complex, the media still props him up as a genius. Musk is not self-made. He's not smart. He's just a spoiled white billionaire who was handed his success. He was born into apartheid wealth. His family was rich off South African emerald mining, meaning he never had to struggle. His father literally owned an emerald mine, so Elon was never self-made. Every time he fails, white media protects him. When Tesla is in crisis, they call it growing pains. When Twitter crashes, they say he's revolutionizing social media. When his companies bleed money, they say he's playing the long game. Musk is a perfect example of white privilege shielding an incompetent fraud. White tech bros worship him because he is their last hope. They need to believe a white man is still the future. They need him to be a genius, because if he's not, then white men aren't the most powerful people in tech anymore. Musk's cult ignores reality. They pretend his endless failures don't exist. They attack anyone who criticizes him. They believe in his absurd sci-fi promises, no matter how many times he's lied. Musk's fanboys will literally destroy their own lives to defend him. They buy overpriced, malfunctioning Teslas. They invest in his scams, then lose their savings. They waste their time hyping up his projects, only to be left with nothing. Elon Musk is not a genius. He's a fraud, a parasite, and a white savior myth that exists to prop up a dying empire. Elon Musk is not the future. He's a symbol of white desperation, an incompetent, overhyped, failing billionaire whose entire existence proves that white dominance is crumbling. He is the last sad illusion of white technological superiority. And just like everything he touches, that illusion is falling apart. Cope.
My God, when I saw this, and this came up into my feed this morning, and I really sat down and I said, I want to bring this to our PDR posse, but I wanted to make sure that it had the proper context. You know, Bridge said exactly the right thing. This is one secure white dude. Because he wasn't trying to put anybody superior to anybody. What he was trying to do is say white superiority is a myth. White superiority is a myth. The superiority of anything is a myth. But trying to maintain, and you know what? It's so interesting. Trying to maintain that has hurt more so than it helped. And what I tell people is white supremacy hurts people that are identified as white more so than it hurts anybody else, because it creates mediocrity when you don't have real competition. And for those who are against DEI, they don't understand that DEI is what prevents others from becoming inferior. It is what prevents inferiority, because everybody is on the same playing field as it wasn't before. You know, everybody was talking the great things. Oh, by the way, I think Magner, you had something to call in about, right? If you're still with the program right now, go ahead and give us a call now, because we don't have much of the show left. But I was going to talk about the Latino guy that was, let's see, he's correct about the Tesla computers, because I own one. When I had full self-driving, the car was fine. But if you try using semi-autonomous, the car will damn near kill you. You know, that is amazing. All right, let's go with Ray Brackens. Hey, Ray, how you doing, my dear brother? Ray?
Hello?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, you're live.
Yeah, hey, Egberto. Yeah, I appreciated that gentleman. You know, his voice is like ASMR, and he's so smooth, and everything he says is just hitting on the points like pew, pew, pew. But, you know, I heard him talking, and it's like, the sad thing is you have people like Joe Rogan, and I'll say I don't watch Joe Rogan, but I used to be a big fan of Bill Maher. And I remember when Elon Musk went on Bill Maher and had an interview, and Bill Maher was like, tell me what it's like to be the most interesting genius. You know, Bill Maher was just sitting there, you know, sucking as you know what, and just you know, giving him these goo gaga eyes as if he's invented the cure to cancer, you know? And
Right.
It's people like Bill Maher and people like Joe Rogan that look at him with this sickening bromance, like this man knows everything. He's gonna save the world from everything, and everybody hates him for it. And it's like, no, this man, like he said, the only thing this man has invented or innovated is hype and bullshit. He said it best.
Yeah, look, let me tell you something. Because of my training as an engineer, because I worked for NASA, because I've actually invented algorithms that I've thrown into the public domain, I can firsthand tell you immediately that I understood immediately that Musk was just hype and a fraud. I also lived through the bubble, the technology bubble. I don't know if you remember the internet bubble. You're kind of young, so you were probably in your teens when it happened. I remember when people were putting up websites and becoming billionaires. Hell, Mark Cuban became a billionaire from a website. A lot of these guys came up with.
I remember when Amazon was a bookstore.
Yes, and that's how a lot of these guys they didn't innovate or create anything of substance. What they used are things that were out there. I know a lot of guys like me, when we were trying to get capital back in the 80s and the early 90s, right? People laughed us out, and then we had to sit back and watch guys like Elon Musk and these other guys without any competency. They would hire engineers from overseas to build websites and then market it. They will buy engineers from overseas to create these little apps. And we would be sitting back in our chairs saying, my God, imagine when we had the Y2K, that's before your time too, my brother, when the Y2K occurred.
Oh, I remember Y2K. Yeah, I was part of that.
Right. My products were built in the middle 90s, and we had figured out Y2K a long time ago. We knew it wasn't an issue. So when all these other companies were ripping off other companies about changing your software for Y2K, anybody of a limited degree of intelligence who wrote software in the 1980s knew that we were going to have a turnover in 2000, and the software took that into account. Yet a lot of people made billions of dollars, and I'm not kidding you, billions of dollars by telling companies of incompetence. And that's what I tell when I tell people that there are not a lot of folks that are, capitalism is made of a whole bunch of incompetent business people, because you have a group of business people telling another group of business people that Y2K is occurring and this is going to be a problem. And they just say, okay, what do I need to fix it? And you just tell them whatever and you fix it. I left, and I'm not kidding any of you, I left on the table with my one product called ComDRV. I left $600,000 on the table because of honesty. Because I refused to tell folks my software already took care of that problem. So you don't have to get an upgrade. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've been called an SOB for not just socking it to people, socking it to these companies, Boeing, socking it to NEC and all these other guys. And I refuse to do it. But hey.
Yeah, I mean, you found another way to contribute. And I just want to say as a person who was a computer user back then, thank you, Egberto, for, doing what you did and contributing, because I remember on December 31st, 2000, nothing happened. And that's probably a lot to do with what you had done. So,
well, it was hard, but thank you, my brother. I appreciate you calling. I thought I was going to hear from Magner, but I guess he left the call today since we didn't start with that subject. But hey, Ray, thank you for calling. And by the way, thank you for the support you gave us at KPFT. We did make our goal at KPFT.
Excellent. I'm glad I could contribute, because I'm always listening, and I want to feel like I'm, I had got my tax return, so I was able to fork over, what I feel like was my dues.
Well, look, we appreciate it very much, Phil. A lot of you guys not only support Politics Done Right here, but support it at KPFT. So thank you. Oh, there's Magner. Let me get to Magner. Thank you so kindly, brother. All right, let's see. Magner, you're on.
Yeah, I didn't want to step on Ray. And you had a good show, so I wasn't sure if today would be the best day to call, but I didn't want to let you down either.
Okay, well, I tell you what, let's do it tomorrow because we only have 2 minutes. But I know I told you in the morning show today I wanted you to tell the audience about what you told me. But let's go ahead and recue it for tomorrow because what you just said I think is something that a lot of people need to hear in better detail. And I noticed you sent me an email. I didn't get the chance to read the articles yet, but I'm going to take a look at that.
Just provide the receipts. They go back to a law that was written in 1610. And at one point in time, I believe 45 states in our union said that if our parents fall into they can't pay their bills or something, then they defer. The government defers to us. But there's a lot to unpack with that, and I'll call tomorrow.
All right, look, I appreciate you. Thank you very much, Patrick. We'll talk tomorrow, okay?
Yes, sir. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Anyway, folks, look, I want to thank you guys for listening to the program. Check out the newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, where we have this link to the story about the Latino who is having second thoughts. Latino voting for Donald Trump, who the ICE came and slammed him against the car, put handcuffs on him. But like I told folks, if you are a native-looking Latino, not a blue-eyed blonde Latino, but a native-looking Latino, what do you think's going to happen for you? And there are so many who decided, the men specifically, I am a Trump guy because of their machismo and racism. I'm a Trump guy. Now they're seeing that Trump doesn't look at them as one of their own at all. Anyway, folks, I'm at the air part of the show. I'll read the comments a little later. Shakula Hairstylist, welcome to Politics Done Right. I don't think I called you out before, nor did I call out Billy Ray. Let's see who else I missed. If I missed you, forgive me. I think I saw who else. Anyway, please support the program however you can, my dear brothers and sisters. The way to do it is to become a paid subscriber of our Substack newsletter called Egberto on the Run, or Egberto off the record. Please go ahead and do that at politicsdoneright.com/support. politicsdoneright.com/support. Go ahead and click that. If you are listening to us on Substack right now, you can just go ahead and join, click and subscribe, become a paid subscriber if you really want to help what we're doing. I have a newsletter that I'm almost done writing as far as my disappointment with what the Democratic Party is doing as far as activism and what I think our activist organizations should be doing now and what we as individuals can actually do. I'll be sending that out sometime this afternoon. But please consider becoming. First of all, if you're on Substack right now on the application, just go ahead and join. Subscribe to the newsletter. If you're not, just go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter and become a paid subscriber if you have the wherewithal to do so. Anyway, thank you all for being here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.